Hello, I'm Edward October. Over the years, I've narrated more ghost stories, horror shows, and creepypastas than I can count. And yet, the crimes discussed on our true crime podcast managed to scare the shit out of me. This program is not suitable for children or the faint of heart. If you are such a person, go ahead and switch off this podcast. Listen to something else. Are you still with us? Well, we've warned you.
Hi, Jen.
Hey, Kim. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm trying to stay warm. That it's, negative 4
1?
This morning or whatever it was.
I think at 7 a.m. it was like -7 or something, and it's warmed up to a balmy -1.
Ooh,
Feels like
Get that
-13.
bikini on.
I know. It's freezing.
Well,
It's freezing.
boy, do I have something to warm you up here. This case is, it's I'm gonna say it. It's a humdinger.
Yep.
It
I know.
is. It's,
you like those humdingers?
It's got some twist in it, and it's a little bit, I don't know. It's just one of those that I think, wow. And then I keep thinking, wow, and saying it out loud. And I bet you'll do the same. You ready to go?
Yep. Let's get into it.
So today we are headed to Bemidji, Minnesota. This is where firefighters are at the scene of a mobile home fire where 35-year-old single mother Melissa Norby lives. Now, as they worked to put out the fire, they noticed that windows had been blown out from the building, and some of those windows were blown out as much as 12 to 15 feet, which indicates how hot the fire was burning.
Like from a backdraft or just the windows
Kind
from
of.
the fire?
And, this is a mobile home, and I know I don't need to say this, but how flammable they are and how quickly they do burn. So there wasn't a whole lot there, or what was pretty damaged. Investigators determined that the start of the fire seemed to be in the primary bedroom. Now, once that they get inside the home, they notice in the bedroom that there is a red gas can in the middle of the floor. And this can had not burnt up in the fire. What would that red can be doing there? What else they find is much more disturbing. They find a body, but the body is underneath a mattress, and both the body and the mattress are severely burned. Furthermore, the location of both was in the middle of the house. The body and the mattress were not in the bedroom. They were in the middle of the home. When firefighters noticed that the body had their hands taped and bound, they contacted the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. Authorities ruled that it is an arson, but it is clear that it's also a homicide as well. Now, as investigators are working the scene, neighbors approach them and inform them that Melissa has a young son who lived there in the home with her. And the investigators explain, well, they've only found one body. So police reach out, and they quickly are able to determine that the young boy was staying with family, with relatives, and he's unharmed, thank goodness. However, there was someone else that was staying with Melissa that night and who is now unaccounted for, and that is a 5-year-old little girl that we'll be calling Amber. Now, at the scene, they're there. They're trying to figure out what's going on, who's supposed to be where, who was supposed to be at the home, why the body was under the mattress. I mean, all these questions are, I'm sure going through all their minds, and they're trying to figure out what the heck they have. When a frantic young woman named Amanda Smith approaches them, Amanda explains that her young daughter was staying the night with Melissa. And, this was a very common occurrence among the two mothers because Melissa and Amanda had been friends since childhood. The women would often keep each other's children for sleepovers. Amanda keeps telling them that her young daughter has to be inside. She has to be inside. That's where her daughter was. Now, what she didn't yet know, of course, was that investigators had scoured the residence looking for Melissa's little boy. So they were pretty sure that they didn't miss it. There was no one else inside the residence.
And it was a small trailer, correct?
It's a double wide, but the trailers still aren't that,
right.
They're not that large. At this point, authorities, they're pretty happy that they believe that little Amber was not in the house fire. But what they need to do now is find out where she is and why. Amanda is sure that Melissa would never trust her child to someone else, especially if, Amanda didn't know or trust them or had even known about it to begin with.
Wait, so they're saying that the child went with somebody else, or that's what they're thinking?
She's 5. She's not there.
Where else would she be? Yeah. And you would think that the mother's friend wouldn't do anything without at least asking first. Right?
And that's what Amanda was saying. She was like, I know Melissa. She would never give my daughter to somebody, or at least tell me that, hey, is it okay if Amber goes to stay the night with Susie Q or whatever?
It's not like the Anthony case where some Zanny the nanny had him for a month, right?
Exactly. As is so often the case, authorities take a look at the girl's parents. Of course, since we sadly know by doing this podcast, parents often do harm their own children. They learned from Amanda that Melissa's son had went to stay the night with relatives, so maybe, just maybe, that's where Amber is. Now, Amanda felt okay with, her daughter staying with her best friend, and so she's, I'm sure, losing her mind to lack of saying anything else, After police go through the parents' phones, they are now sure that neither were involved with the girl's disappearance, which meant now that it was looking much worse. They're wondering if this was an arson, to hide a homicide, to conceal an abduction. Of course, officers start from the center and they work their way out like they always do. They look into an old boyfriend that Melissa had years ago, and they learn that he had actually been convicted on an arson charge. So their attention, of course, was piqued. Mm-hmm. They check out his alibi, and it checks out. He's not their guy. As the case is getting worked on, they reach out to relatives to see what was going on in Melissa's life at this time. They learn through Melissa's cousin, named Tuesday, that she had recently started seeing a man by the name of Chance. Now, Chance, whom she'd met online, was not all that Tuesday shared with officers. Tuesday told them that Melissa shared with her that the couple liked to venture onto, how shall I say, a little kinky side, a little bit of S&M, as well as some role-playing. Melissa really enjoyed the daddy-daughter stuff, where her partner would be the daddy and she would be the daughter.
Now, did they do this online, or was it in between? We
don't know yet. We don't know, because Tuesday
just like to offer that information out, just willy-nilly, huh?
All this, but it all comes together.
Okay.
Melissa also had told her cousin that the sex often turned violent. In fact, one incident Melissa told her cousin about ended with this man punching her and choking her out, putting her in the back of an SUV and raping her. That's her boyfriend. Tuesday also mentioned that the man owned a food truck. Now, while comparing notes with other friends, police are able to learn more about Chance. For starters, his real name was Jacob, and the food truck he owned was called Jake's Eats. With that information, officers call the city to inquire about a license that may have been applied for to give to somebody named Jake who operated a food truck. They learn that there is, in fact, a food truck in operation called Jake's Eats, and it's owned and operated by Jacob Kinn. The investigators' hearts drop as they are all too familiar with this man. Jacob Kinn was a registered sex offender, well known to all law enforcement in the area.
Trying to work out how that would work with a registered sex offender to own a food truck. You know what I mean?
I would think you couldn't, but what do I know? But we'll see what they did with him, because I'll get to that in a minute, because that's going to gripe your hide too, or whatever that saying is. It's going to bug you, because it bugged me.
Griping your hide, huh?
Whatever it is called. Their worst fears of what could have happened to little Amber was now a reality, and it was not good. Jacob had a long record with charges that did not bode well for the little girl. Charges included child sex abuse materials, or CSAM, along with what I would say is this just gave me the chills. He had put an ad on Craigslist asking to buy a girl, to buy a young...
What?
Yes, to buy a young girl because he wanted to take photos of her. Well, thank goodness the sheriff's department picked up on that, and they had an undercover female officer pose as the mother of an 8-year-old little girl, willing to allow Jacob to do this.
Did it say he wanted to buy a girl, or he just wanted a girl?
He wanted to buy her to take photos of her. Mm-hmm. Jacob, thank goodness, took the bait, and he was convicted. Now, here's where you're going to get your Hyde chapter, whatever that stupid thing I said a while ago. So instead of serving time for this offense, he brokered a deal. He would serve no time as long as he didn't violate his probation.
Jesus.
I mean, if there's not signs that say that this is not going to end well, Jacob Kinn just jumped to the top of the suspect list. Oh. Investigators now worry that the arson was set just to cover up murdering Melissa to get that baby girl. So here we go. They're going to go right to him and they're going to get him. Well, they go to his house. They knock on the door. Shocker, shocker. Jacob's not home. Gee, where could he be? We'll get to that. So with him not home and them not being able to pull him in to talk to him, this was actually probably a blessing in hindsight. So instead, they come up with a plan. Investigators call Jacob's probation officer, and they explain that there's a missing child, and in all missing child cases, they pull in all the sexual offenders to interview, and this is standard practice. What they want to do is they want Jacob to believe that he is just one of many. It's no big deal. You know, he's a sexual offender, got to bring him in. You know the deal, Jacob. We're just going to do this, then we'll let you go. But we all know he's at the top of the list. He is their prime suspect at this point. So Jacob is brought into the station for questioning. The plan was to be very calm so he doesn't know that they're onto him. Jacob arrives in a black T-shirt with a baseball cap, his face wearing a goatee. They notice his shoes were wet. Okay. He sits across from Minnesota Bureau of Criminal, that's the BCA, by the way, Senior Special Agent Girardi and Agent Miusasis. Now, the officers explain to him, Jacob, that he's not under arrest and he can leave at any time. Now, this is just to keep him cool and hopefully get him talking. You know that old trick. They ask him if he has seen or heard about a missing girl, and Jacob denies it. They ask Jacob if he'd heard about a fire, and he said yes, that his ex-girlfriend had told him about it. He adds that, he knows that lady that died in that fire and told the agents that he had not seen her or spoken to her for over 6 months. I guess Jacob didn't realize that Tuesday and Melissa were close and had actually spoken about Jacob. So that's lie number 1. Stay with me on the lies. Jacob tells officers that the two of them worked together and that he was not seeing her in any romantic sense. Jacob claims that Melissa was spreading the rumor of the two of them dating because he liked another girl at work, and Melissa was not happy about it. She was jealous. That's what he says, of course. He adds that he was never attracted to Melissa and that the two of them had never had sex.
Tuesday says something different.
When detectives showed Jacob a picture of the missing child and said he has seen her before because Melissa had showed him a picture of the girl a long time ago. So he's seen her. Mind you, it's been 6 months and little kids. How would you remember that? But okay, Jacob, you stick with that story, buddy. Cops then asked Jacob where he's been the last 48 hours. Now remember, his shoes were wet and they noticed that. Investigators asked him, hey, you know what? We just need a timeline of what you were doing the last 48 hours. At this point in time, the fire had happened roughly 20 hours earlier. Now, what Jacob doesn't know yet is that before he arrived for questioning, detectives had already determined his location through his phone records based on his probation officer's call, where he was. Jacob claimed that he had been fishing up north at Clear Lake, about 50 miles north of Bemidji, which is a little odd since Jacob's cell phone actually pinged in a town named Big Fork, which happens to be about 40 miles southeast of Clear Lake. When asked about the name of the fishing resort, I know you're going to be shocked, Jen, Jacob can't remember. As the agents continue to question him about the lake, they start asking particular questions, such as, what's it look like up there? Did you stay in a tent or a cabin? Is it a resort or is it more rural? Jacob begins to get a little testy and he wants to know, why does any of this matter? Because they're asking him, like, did you catch anything? No. What were you fishing for? Bass. Was there any other kind of fish there? Like, they're asking him these questions that would not seem like a lot, but they know what they're doing, right? They know
because he has no idea what's going on up there, and because he's never been. I get it.
So he's getting a little angry because he's like, what does this mean? What does this have to do with anything? So at this time, they decide to go ahead and let him in on a little secret. Jacob is told that his cell phone put him somewhere else. He stays strong, claiming that he was not there fishing. He was not in that. He was at Clear Lake. He was not in Big Fork. He doesn't know what they're talking about. Mm-hmm.
And what's the difference between the two?
40 miles difference, which is a lot. And one's a little
too
rural.
Much to be that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The inside agents are talking to Jacob. Investigators, police, they don't have a search warrant for anything yet, but you can go be nosy if that vehicle's out in the parking lot of the police department, right? So investigators go out and they look at his vehicle. They note that there's mud and weeds caught in the undercarriage. Now, this would not necessarily be on a car if you went to a popular resort, because you could kind of guess that you're going to be taking, pretty decent roads to a popular resort, not going over land, for instance. Off-roading. Due to this, they are able to secure a search warrant for the car, his house, and then Jacob himself. So back in there with Jacob in the old question room, we have the topic of Melissa. Jacob denies ever having sex with her or that they were even connected other than that they worked together. And he said, the officers asked, do you have a way of getting in contact with her? And he says, no, he doesn't have her number. They didn't really stay in contact after they lost touch. Oh, is that so, Jacob? They kind of venture back around to the sex topic. And then he does admit, well, she would sometimes send me these flirty messages. But, that was a long time ago and nothing ever became of it. Oh, interesting, Jacob, because I thought you just said you did not have her number or a way to get in touch with her. And 6 months is not that long of a time to get a new phone. I'm just saying. Or keep your old phone, rather. Time to step up the pressure. Agents just put it out there, and they tell Jacob that they know he was dating Melissa. Of course, he plays it off again, and it was not a relationship. They tell him they know they were having sex. And again, he claims, no, we weren't. I can't imagine. This would drive me nuts to go round and round with somebody when you knew the answer and they're still lying to you. That would drive me nuts.
It's like being with a teen.
I was just thinking that. So at this point, they're like, we're going all in. And they decide to hit him hard and direct. They plead with him, please let us know where that little girl is. We know you know. But yet Jacob is still adamant. He has no idea. He doesn't know anything about this little girl. Okay, fine. Sounds great, Jacob. We're going to search your van. Jacob says no, because now they've ruined his trust with them. Swear, that's what he said, because he can't trust them. He doesn't trust them now to go look in his car. Right now, the agents know. They know this is the right guy, but what they desperately need to do is to get him to keep talking, and they need to find out where little Amber is. At this point, Jacob stands up, and he says he's had enough, and he's leaving. The agent in the
taking his ball home and going away.
Yeah. Agent's like, no, you're not. Sit down. And then he was just like, no, you're not. Sit back down. So Jacob then, of course, says, I want a lawyer. Of course he does. As the agents are out of the room, Jacob announces to the camera that, hey, I'm leaving. I'm out of here. He exits the room. Moments later, he walks back in with the agents. They want him to stay there, but they want him on his own free will. They want him to keep talking. They want him to cooperate. And they really don't have a way to force him to be there. He's not under arrest. They don't have anything yet, other than pretty good idea that he did it. So they decide to show him some photos and ask if they look at all familiar. One is a gas can. That's right, the gas can, the one that was found in the trailer. Jacob says, yeah, I own a can like that, but it's back at my house. Sure it is, Jacob. Again, Jacob reiterates that he does not know the little girl, has never been in touch with Melissa, not in the last 6 to 8 months or so, and has no idea where the little girl may be. They then inform him that they're going to be conducting a search warrant on all things Jacob. All right now, Jacob is not happy at this point. He begins to question the police as to why they are doing this. Again, Jacob attempts to leave the room, and the agents would not allow him to do so. Jacob Kinn has now been in police custody for 4 hours and desperately wants out. So Jacob then, trying to get out of this, which is, I have no words for it. He tries to make a deal with officers. Hey, listen, I'll give you my clothes, I'll give you my van, and you can have my phone, but just let me go. Well, without much else to hold him on, they take his offer and they watch Jacob Kinn walk out of the police station. Now, you
That'd be hard. That'd be so hard.
You have to know if that guy has given up all that stuff, his phone, his van, and his clothes. You have to ask why. Why are you so desperate to get out of here?
But it would be hard to let him walk out.
Oh, I'll be so mad. However, there's good news. His cell phone does not disappoint. Authorities find many images of young children on his phone. And the cell phone data came back in, and the cell phone hits within that 5-mile radius north of that cell tower near Big Fork. So it's really pinned out. They have a 5-mile area that he had to have been in, which is pretty good. We now know, of course, he lied about being at Clear Lake. Looking up the remote area where the cell phone pinged, investigators looked to see if maybe any of the nearby properties could belong to either Jacob or someone Jacob knew. Bam! Some things just always come together. They get a hit. There's a property that belongs to a relative of Jacob's, and the cell phone ding is almost perfectly in the center of that property.
Thank goodness.
Time is of the essence, and the team needs to hightail it out to that area and see what they can find. 26 hours had now passed, and they are desperate to find Amber and hope she is alive. BCA agents Rob Frack and Don Newhouse traveled to Big Fork and arrived just at sunrise. They drove through the night, basically, to get there. As they're looking around for anything that could help them out, it didn't take long. Again, sometimes things just happen all for a reason. It makes me so happy. They approach a dirt road, and the road's name is Township Road 288, so it's in the middle of nowhere. And they immediately notice some tire tracks that look very fresh and very similar to the tires on Jacob's car. Now, remind you, when they went out there to look on Jacob's Jeep, that's the vehicle he had, they found that dirt and mud on his tires as well as in the undercarriage. Well, thank goodness Mother Nature, sometimes she comes in clutch. A recent downpour had just occurred, and maybe just a little bit of fate, but those fresh tire marks were still on the road. Now, had they missed those tire tracks, if they wouldn't have seen those, they would have probably kept going and would have missed all of this. So it was just, all the signs were lining up, I tell you. So the agents followed the tracks all the way to where the tracks entered a field. So here's where your grass and stuff comes in. The agent's car made its way along the road until they were not really able to go any further other than getting in the field. So at this point, the agents get out and they walked, and they walked, and they walked, and it ended up being somewhere around half a mile. Once the agents made it to the top of the hill, they saw a camper shell at the end of the field, and wouldn't you know it, tire tracks led straight up to the camper. I got goosebumps about this, I'm going to tell you. When the agents arrived at the camper, they immediately noticed that the door was taped shut using electrical tape. As Agent Rob attempted to open the camper door, he could barely contain himself, unsure of what he would find inside, knowing the very real possibility of finding the body of a 5-year-old little girl inside. He took a deep breath and opened the door. Hi, what did you say your name was again? I'm going to take a little video, Agent Rob said to the frightened little girl. The little girl gave her name, Amber. How did you get here? Missy's friend brought me here. What's Missy's friend's name? I don't know. Sitting on a makeshift bed was a sleepy little girl dressed in a pink top and pink jammy pants with little white kittens on them. She was alive. The blonde little girl told officers her mommy's name was Amanda and she wanted her mom. The little girl's legs had been bound with duct tape and her arms, now free, had tape residue on them where the duct tape had once been. She showed the agents her scrapes and bruises. She told officers that the man drove a white Jeep with the name on the door. That would be Jake's Eats. She described what he looked like. She tells them that she had been to the man's house and described the color and the size of the home. She told them at his house there was a mama cat with kittens. This, you see, is how he got her to come with him in the first place.
Exactly.
To go see the baby kittens. The little girl absolutely loved animals, and he knew this. Now, when I say I never get teary about stuff like this really did make me tear up. I try to keep it professional.
She's
have
5.
My little breakdowns later. But the fact that she's alive, that little angel is alive. So there's a photo of Agent Rob holding her, and he simply took a picture and sent it out to all, his team. And they were just, oh my God. And truly a miracle. They got to her. They got her. An arrest warrant was issued for 32-year-old Jacob Kinn, and they needed to find him. Where they would find him would leave officers wondering what would have happened to Amber had they not found her just an hour prior. You see, Jacob was located driving his father's vehicle back to the camper shell. That's right. He was headed back to get her, and we can only
Well, we know
surmise
what she was going to,
what that
we
would
know what
mean.
he was going to do. He was going to get rid of her.
Yes, we do. On June 23rd, 2016, Jacob Kinn is brought into custody and taken to the Grand Rapids Sheriff's Office, where he would be interviewed once again. This time, investigators are not going to be so nice. Jacob tells officers that he doesn't understand why he's being arrested, clearly not realizing what had transpired just hours ago. They caught him on his way to that camper shell, but they didn't tell him that they had Amber, that she was safe. They knew, it's done. Right? So he's still thinking, wait, you brought me in for what? He's not realizing all this has happened, right? So investigators want him to stick to the lies. That's what they want. They want to confirm with him that he was not in contact with Melissa Norby, nor did he know the little girl. That's what they want him to say. Jacob falls right in line and, of course, says, yeah, that's true. I haven't talked to Melissa. I don't know the little girl. And a classic move, and this just makes me happy. One of the officers asked, are you 100% sure? And Jacob says, more like 95% sure, because he's tired from the police keeping him awake all night. Remember that little statement. Jacob once again asked what happened. I mean, it was just a couple hours ago. I was free to leave the station, and now I'm being arrested. Agent Paul Girardi simply pulls up the photo of Agent Rob holding little Amber on his phone and shows it to Jacob. Jacob moves around awkwardly in his chair, but he doesn't say a word. Then Agent Paul asked, classic move, is this the 5% you weren't so sure about? Because there it is. We have it. That's why you didn't know what we knew. Still, Jacob does not say a word. Investigators tell Jacob it's time to tell them everything. Jacob tells police that he started to talk to Melissa Norby about 2 weeks to a month earlier. He said that they had never had sex during this time, but they often role-played on the phone, and this was the daddy-daughter stuff mentioned earlier. Jacob wiped his eye with a tissue before continuing. He said he went to Melissa's house the other night, the night of the arson, Tuesday night. When asked if he knew little Amber would be at the house, he admitted, yes, he did. Did you know that she was going to be there? No. Did you know she was going to be there? Yeah. Jacob claims the girl was there once before when he visited. What was her role? To be looked at, for the most part, Jacob said. Kind of like viewing porn while you're having sex? The officer asked. Jacob then looks around awkwardly and asks for a lawyer, and the interview stops. Now, I know you're thinking, wow, this is something, but Jen, the biggest bombshell is about to come. Inside Jacob's van, police find yet another cell phone. And on this cell phone were texts between Jacob Kinn and Melissa Norby. The messages detail an elaborate plan. Agents learned Melissa and Jacob had come up with the plan together while she was watching the young girl earlier. They decided that Melissa would be attacked, this is like in quotes, attacked by a stranger in a random attack, such as a carjacking gone wrong, while she was watching the little girl. Jacob would then take the girl for himself, keeping her as his, quote, toy. Text between the two mentioned a little toy for daddy, as well as having her bathed and ready to go by 7 p.m. that night when you bring your gift to daddy. That's Jacob, by the way. The two agreed that with the abduction, Jacob would have to hurt Melissa. Melissa's text to Jacob read, quote, you have to be able to hurt me for real, daddy. I know it's going to hurt a lot, but I know you're only doing it because you want us so much and you love me too. In another text, Jacob says, get me an F toy or I will do as I just said. Melissa, this is heartless. I'll be fine to drive to get her. Figured I'd let her have one last dinner with her family. That is her best friend's daughter, and that's what she says to Jacob. The idea would be that this would be a stranger abduction who hurt Melissa and abduct Amber to throw police. This was their great plan. Investigators also learned that the kidnapping was actually supposed to happen a week earlier, but the little girl didn't actually come to Melissa's house, which infuriated Jacob. It ruined his plan. She'd either come down with a bug or for some reason she did not come over. It's pretty clear now Jacob had no interest in Melissa other than that she could give him what he wanted, which was a little girl. Melissa wanted Jacob so badly, she was willing to do whatever he wanted as long as she could have him, even letting him kidnap her best friend's baby girl. Now, what investigators do not know is if Melissa's death was an accident, perhaps rough sex gone fatal, or perhaps Melissa was changing her mind about abducting her bestie's little girl, and Jacob killed her for backing out of the deal. Senior Special Agent Chad Musaeus has his own theory about what happened, stating, quote, "In my estimation anyway, she was willingly bound and tied up, and then at the last seconds of her life, choked out because Jacob Kinn didn't want a witness to the abduction."
That makes sense.
And we'll never know, because of course we won't, because he's a POS. 1 year after the death of Melissa Norby, Jacob Kinn takes a plea deal, which, believe me you, is the only decent thing this man did. And what that meant is that little Amber wouldn't have to take the stand to testify against him. Jacob Kinn will plead guilty to second-degree murder without intent, kidnapping, and sexual conduct, and is sentenced to 52 years in prison. Now, maybe you noticed that second-degree murder without intent. We're going to get to that in just a second. Police believe that the crime unfolded like this. On the evening of June 21st, 2016, Jacob Kinn arrived at the home of Melissa Norby. While Jacob and Melissa had sex, Amber was in a neighboring room playing with her toys. She's 5. After they were finished, Jacob placed a belt around Norby's neck and choked her. He said she went limp and there was blood coming out of her mouth. Jacob then pulled up Melissa's pants and then put a mattress on top of her body to hide her so that Amber would not see her. Jacob then took Amber from the trailer and drove her to his cabin. While at the cabin, he collected a gasoline can and then drove back to Melissa's trailer and set it on fire. He placed the gas can inside the trailer, believing that the can would not survive the fire.
Yeah.
But he was wrong.
Dummy.
Once the fire was going, he drove back to the cabin where he sexually assaulted the little girl. Now, as if nothing had happened, nothing occurred, everything's normal, Jacob Kinn left and went to work on June 22nd, 2016, and it was between 8 and 9 that night that he returned to the cabin and moved the girl to the camper shell, which was near Effie, Minnesota. Now, thankfully, little Amber did not ever have to tell her story of torture and abuse in open court, thank goodness. But we mentioned the second-degree unintentional murder. So why is it considered unintentional? You have any guesses?
The murder unintentional?
Yeah, of Melissa.
Because they can't prove that he actually, or why she was killed, right?
Correct. Because Melissa Norby, and by all accounts, had told several people, part of her sexual gratification, what she liked, was to get choked out during sex.
They couldn't prove it.
They could make an argument, both sides, that yeah, it was on purpose, or no, she was accidentally killed. So therefore, it was unintentional. In the courtroom, even though this is just talk about tugs at your heartstrings, thank goodness Amber did not have to testify, but she did send a letter in that she wanted read to him, and courtesy of her grandmother read the letter out loud, and in part of it, this is what she said to Jacob. Quote, she told him she hated him. She does not like the way he plays with her. She does not want to play with him anymore, but thank you for letting me play with your kitties.
Oh,
is that like such out of the mouth of a 5-year-old? The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children honored the men and women who rescued that little girl at their annual Heroes Awards ceremony. And that is the story of little Amber. And thank goodness it did not end as so many of these others do, but truly despicable that the friend was in on it. That's how desperate she wanted to be loved by this.
I don't know who's the bigger villain here.
That's what I was thinking too.
They're both horrible people.
You and I are best friends. I don't even know what to say.
Mm-mm.
That man would have brought that up about maybe stealing one of your kids at my house. I'd invite him back over. I sure would. And you know what I'd do?
Called, yeah.
I think I'd probably kill him.
No.
I don't know.
I would have called the police and no, there's no way.
Yeah, but see, the last time he got probation. He tried to buy a girl and he got probation. If he would have got some jail time, he would not. And he did this again and again. They knew his name. They knew him by name.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I'm going to get off my soapbox.
No, it's horrible.
When you see that little video of...
I can't even watch it.
I'm telling you.
I can't.
And her in her cute little pink jammy pants with white kittens on them. Mm-hmm. Like, I just can't. And she's got a little messed up hair, you know?
That's the one thing I always worried about with my oldest daughter was she loved animals so much that's how she would be tricked. And of course, I had to get out of the whole true crime thing while my kids were little because I just couldn't deal with it. But yeah, it's my big concern. I would hound her. I don't care. You come see me first.
If they did not see those tire tracks,
I know
they would have missed her, and he would have gotten to her first, and that would have been it. Yep. And then her mom, Amanda. I can't imagine that you trusted. She kept Melissa's son all the time. I just can't. Yeah, it's a lot.
Just over a relationship, ruining lives.
And I don't
because
mean
you wanted a relationship.
Say this and be this person, but he liked little girls. He wanted nothing to do with her. How did she not see that?
He might have enjoyed the kinkiness of their sex life.
I don't think so.
Oh, I think he enjoyed hurting her.
And maybe he did. But it was also a means to get what he wanted, right? So I have to entertain her to get what I want, which is a toy. That's what he called her. Whatever. Disgusting. Anyway, that's the story.
He's a monster, so is she. So absolutely horrible. Thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Yeah.
So anyway, have you been watching anything lately? What a segue. Woo!
What a segue. Not really. The only time I'm watching anything for this past 2 weeks of January is when I'm on the treadmill and I've switched to something light. I've switched to some light fodder. Watching some British TV shows. So that's about it. So yeah, what about you? Did you catch up on your TV?
Not really. I'm trying to think about it. I do, but not any. I started watching Yellowstone again because
you're obsessed with it. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. So I'm in the middle of season 3 again or something. And I'm going to cry. I'm going to cry when they,
People haven't watched it, so don't give any spoilers.
No. Well, there's still part of it that needs to come out. That part hasn't come out yet because they had that's a disagreement or whatever over scheduling. So there's still half of I think it's season 5 that hasn't come out yet. And I don't think it's coming out to the end of the year. So yeah.
Interesting. One of the shows that I've watched I'm watching is Taskmaster. They tried to do an American version here, but it was stupid. Taskmaster is kind of like a game show where they have comedians on and they make them do these stupid tasks.
Oh, it's probably funny.
It's really funny. And I keep thinking you and I would be really good at it because we're both so competitive.
Stupid.
And it's stupid stuff. And it's like I see these contestants making really stupid mistakes. And I'm like, that's Cam and I. I mean,
right?
They totally, I can see us doing it. And I think we would be great at it.
I tried to talk my coworker, Mr. Heron, into going on Amazing Race. And he's like, I wouldn't do that with you. I go, we would be America's favorite because you yell at me all the time and I think you're stupid. And we would fight the entire time. It would be great. And then he's like, actually, if you apply for it. And I go, I mean, we would lose, but I'm telling you, because we're a train wreck.
Apply for it.
You got to just look at us and be like, no.
Oh, no, I know how you guys act. I wouldn't be able to watch you.
Oh, it's something.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
totally.
That's about
now I'm going to have to watch it.
You can find it on YouTube. There's 16 seasons, I guess. I just finished the 13, and there's one comedian that was on there that I'd never heard of before being here in America. Her name is Judy Love, and she was killing me. There's one time I was crying, laughing while I was on the treadmill because it just struck me as so funny. And it's the dumbest stuff, but it just makes me laugh. Yeah. And it makes my hour on the treadmill a lot better.
That was like the comedian I found on TikTok today. I have not cried, laughed that hard. And it just struck me like that guy has my sense of humor. Mm-hmm. I've never laughed so hard at stupid stuff in my life. And he plays like all these roles. I love him. What is his name? Here, let me give him a shout out because he deserves it because I love him. I was like, I sent you a thing.
I can find it real quick.
I said, I want to marry him because he cracks me up. His name is
Breck Fraser.
Yep.
Frazure.
Yeah.
Fraser. I would say Fraser.
He's got a family relative called Skeeter. And he's like, have you been huffing again? And then Skeeter's eyes go crossed. It's him, of course.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just dumb, but it's funny.
Makes you laugh.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, I was crying laughing. Made my day this morning.
Well, speaking of British, since I'm watching British TV, we have a promo today.
We do.
With our friend Stuart. And his podcast is British Murder.
Ooh.
And it's really good. He's really fun. I love Stuart. We've gotten to know each other over Twitter, or I guess it's called X now.
It's called X, Jen.
It's called X. I know. I don't care. It's always going to be Twitter to me.
It's always going to be Twitter to me, too.
But anyway, he's a great guy. He does great research. He has good interviews, but like he's got a quality British Murders, quality podcast. Definitely go listen to him. And today he's in a city that I'm hoping to go to soon. He said he went to York today, he said.
So is he from London?
He's close to
that
York.
Area? Yeah.
He's close to the York area. He's in, obviously, the UK. He's always at British Crime Con, and he's got a pretty big following. I suggest everybody subscribe and
check him out.
Check him out, because he's pretty cool. Right. I like him a lot.
Well, I guess that's about it, unless we have anything else we want to add.
I think that's it for me.
That's it. Okay.
I'm going to go sit by a fireplace for the rest of the day. It's freezing.
Not me. Nope, not me. I'm just going to sit here and freeze. My clothes, my hat, my scarf, and gloves.
I'm in a sweatshirt and a cardigan, like a thick cardigan, with 2 pairs of socks. Wow. So it's cold.
Yeah, it is
cold.
And
I thought I had a heater on, but I guess it went off because it's freezing. Anyway.
All right. Well, Jen, remember, till next time, lock your doors.
Keep passing by those open windows.
Bye-bye.
Love ya. Keep warm.
For reals. Today's episode was researched and written by me, Cam. For more information about this episode, as well as all the sources I used, please check out our show notes or the podcast website at ourtruecrimepodcast.com. Our True Crime Podcast is developed and created by hosts Jen and Cam. Original music and audio mix of all our True Crime Podcast episodes is courtesy of Nico Vertesi from We Talk of Dreams. Listener discretion is provided by Edward October from October Pod VHS. Our True Crime Podcast is executive produced by Nico Vertesi and Dick Vane. Make sure to like and subscribe to Our True Crime Podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. We can be reached on Instagram and Facebook at Our True Crime Podcast or on Twitter at Our True Crime Pod. You can email us at ourtruecrimepodcast@gmail.com. If you really like the show, make sure to check out our Patreon at Our True Crime Podcast. Our True Crime Podcast is an OTC production.
Did you know that the most prolific serial killer in modern history was born in Britain? Were you aware that nearly 2 murders happen every day in the UK? My name's Stuart Blues, and I'm the host of British Murders, a true crime podcast focusing exclusively on British murder cases and serial killers. Every Thursday, I tell the detailed story of a British murder case within the bite-sized time frame of 15 to 30 minutes. That's British Murders, available to stream on your favourite podcast platform now.